Welcome back to the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. Today, episode 16 of Season 3. It's going to be a good one. Honestly, this is a topic that I like to talk about all the time. As you probably hear that motorcycle just zooming in the background. Unfortunately, I always say this, but unfortunately, we keep our patio door open and we're right on the road. Our apartment, my wife and I, we have an apartment. We're right on the road, and it's awful sometimes. It really is awful sometimes. And it's just so loud. Like, even when we were like sleeping, like one of our bedroom windows that we keep open is towards the road. Just like this window right here. This window, on the other side of this window is the road. And that's just how our bedroom window is. And sometimes it's just one motorcycle and one loud car after another. It's just constant and constant and constant and constant. It's just, I don't know. It's something, whatever. At least we're looking for a house. We're looking for a house, and that's just, it's going to go away. But anyways, let me switch screens here. I'm looking at my notes here that I have. I just fixed the description. I set up the description and everything for this episode. That's all I have, basically, when it comes to notes. I just have the title. I'm going to talk straight off the top of my head for this one, and I want to say that because I know sometimes when I talk off the top of my head, I get a little bit off track, but this is going to be a good one. I like to talk about this topic, how to take feedback and critique, mainly because this year in my job and everything, that is something that I had to do very, very, very often, especially when I first signed on in January of 2022. I had to take critique like it was my job, basically. How to learn the style, how to learn their methods, how to learn, how to design in minor league baseball, basically, and how that, molding that from me just working in esports prior to getting the job and then moving into my first big job, big for me. It's my first full-time job out of college, and transitioning into that. So taking feedback and taking critique was something that I had to, get used to. In a job setting. I say in a job setting because it really all started back when I started school. In design school, starting from freshman year. Honestly, this is probably one of the best things I got out of design school is learning how to take feedback and critique. I remember I was in a drawing 101 or like a life drawing 101 class in my freshman year, and it was our first project. We had to go take a photo of something outside and then draw it on this 24 by 18 piece of paper. That was massive. And at least that was massive for me at the time because I've never drawn in my life. Never, ever drawn in my life. So we had to take a picture of something, and we had to draw based off that photo reference. At least that's how I did it. Thinking back, maybe I had to draw while I was there. Maybe that's probably what I probably had to do. But anyways, I hated drawing, so that doesn't matter. I had to draw based off this photo reference, and it was the worst possible thing. It was terrible. It was honestly, trash beyond belief. First time ever using charcoal. First time ever drawing something from scale. And going into, that day when it was due, and we had to pin up. So basically, in the classrooms, we had these walls that were like cork. They were like cork walls and cork spots where we pinned up our work. And the whole class sat around. We'd go from one piece of work to the next and critique and give feedback. And the majority of the time, when in those intro classes, granted, we had no idea what we were talking about or anything. But the majority of the time, it was pretty harsh critique because one, no one really knew what to do, so we were all trying to make each other better. And two, it was some of the honestly, this is part of it too, some of the people in the class like were stuck up. So it was like, okay, we need to give them a harsh critique so they come back down to earth and stop making the class experience horrible. But beyond that, feedback and critique is basically how I was able to get through those classes and be able to improve and be able to get decent grades. Granted, those are intro classes, so the grades and everything is kind of skewed. The quality of the project is kind of not really taken into account. It's basically learning. It's learning the concepts, I guess, in a sense. In those intro classes, that's more how you get the grade. But moving on and moving into my design classes later, like second semester, sophomore year, that's really when I started getting into my curriculum. We were able to, or I was able to really be able to get used to critique and feedback and learn how to take it and learn how to not take it personally, but take it from a point of view where they were trying to help me. And that's something that I had to get through my head and be able to really take that into an account. The problem people have now, I wouldn't say now, but the problem that I'm running into a lot of the time with talking with people and giving feedback to people is that sometimes they take it personally. They take the feedback personally. They take what I'm saying completely personally and not from a point of view of improvement. They take it, like I'm insulting them, where that's completely wrong. There is a point where, I had to take critique for a long time and for a while, for a handful of years, and not just from my classmates, from other people as well, to get used to hearing critique so I can give critique back in a way where I can word it, specifically where it is constructive. There are obviously ways that you can say something that is deliberately insulting, that like you're not 100%, you may not mean it, but you're saying it in a way that easily can be taken as an insult. There are ways that you can say, that you can give feedback that is only constructive. You just have to structure the sentence a certain way and be able to come at it from like a why don't you try this, in my point of view, or maybe not in my point of view, that's probably not the best one, but yeah, like a why don't you try this, or giving your piece of feedback and linking a tutorial to it. Like there are ways to make things constructive and supply a learning experience rather than just saying this sucks. You can say like this sucks, but then you have to be damn sure that you give a reason why this sucks and make sure that reason why has a solution. You can't just say this sucks because the lighting isn't correct. You have to say this sucks because the lighting is actually coming from the top left where you started your light source. So based on the highlights on the character or the subject, and based on how everything is laid out in the subject, that is showing that it's getting lit, showing that it's getting lit by this light source, it actually has your light source coming out from the top right. So switching your highlights and shadows would help show that the light source is coming from the top left like you have planned. Like something like that. There's a way, and it involves more explanation and more, getting into detail of how to fix this. It's one of those things like, don't, like let's say someone has like I had like super fucked up teeth when I was younger. Like let's just say like someone comes up to me, they wouldn't be like, or it's the saying. What's the saying? What am I trying to get at? If they can't fix it in 5 minutes, or if you can't fix it in 30 seconds or something like that, if you can't fix it in a short amount of time, don't like insult it or point it out at all. Like if it's a birth thing or whatever, but like I guess that really doesn't connect. But anyways, giving feedback, you have to have that explanation. I'm kind of rambling, but I like this. You have to have this explanation and this constructive essence of how the person can learn how to fix this and how to fix this the right way. Now when it comes, going outside of a, person to person, like colleague to colleague or friend to friend critique, when you're getting feedback from a client, that's a completely different story, because you're constructing the service. They're coming to you for the service. They're making suggestions based off of what they want. And honestly, starting from the brief and from everything that you're talking with the client pre-project and in the ideation process and the conceptual process, all the ideas and everything and all the direction should be ironed out before you get to, you have the pre-project, the ideation, the concepting and everything, and then in the middle you have obviously like your the creation process. We'll just use that, the creation process right there, right in the middle. And then you have packaging and ending it all up and doing some final tweaks and everything like that. So when working with a client, that the beginning is the biggest part, because then you get all the confusion and all the questions off the table. After you are done with that first part. That in the first part you ask all the questions, you will make sure all the confusion is gone, you make sure the direction is ironed out, and then you start developing. Right? Then you start developing. At least that's how my process is. Obviously, during the development stage, you may start developing and have to go backwards, right? You may have to go backwards and start and re-concept and everything like that. But let's say perfect world. You develop, right? I'm looking down because I'm putting my hands here. You develop in the middle. You concept and you ideate. In the middle, you develop and, create. At the end, you package and finish, right, with fine tweaks. So when it comes to in the development stage, when the client comes back to you, let's say you send a concept off. You send off the concept, right? You send off the finished piece. Let's say they come back with some critique, some changes, and some changes are off of what you originally talked about. Let's say they want to go a different direction, right? You come back and say, this is why I did this. This is why I did X, because we talked about Y, Z, A, B, and C in the conceptual stage of the project and everything like that. So this is my reasoning. And then if they still want to go through with it, then obviously you kind of go back and forth. In my experience working with a client, getting feedback and critique it depends on the client. It's completely dependent on the client, because sometimes clients understand the design process. They understand that it takes a long time and it doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes it does happen overnight, and the times that has happened, the client has, thankfully, at least in my sense, I have never actually had to work with a tough client, which thankful, knock on wood. You can hear me knock on wood there. But every time I've gotten it done pretty quick, they're always surprised, which I know that doesn't always happen. That completely doesn't always happen. So when working with a client that doesn't understand the design process, being able to explain that, being able to have that communication, and when feedback and critique does come, that communication happened before, so they should understand, right? Basically, when working with a client, communication and everything is key. So your feedback and critique that you get with a client, obviously it's not always going to be perfect, but that feedback and critique that you get should be in that constructive space, and you should be able to attack it in a constructive manner based off of the brief, right? Based off the brief. And don't be afraid to give your design opinion, because you're the designer, you know some things. If the client isn't in the design world, some things design-wise that they may not be familiar with. Different ways to attack some certain things to maybe take some loopholes and take some hurdles out of the equation and everything like that. Formatting, composition, different types of things. So speak on things that you're familiar with and that and be able to constructively respond to that feedback and take that feedback into consideration as well, in your whole process. So yeah, basically that's what I wanted to talk about. Crash course, not even a crash course. It's a crash episode, whatever, 15 minutes or less. That should be like my time thing. We're running almost to 15 minutes here. But anyways, guys, I hope you liked this kind of form of easily, I guess, informative or easily, I don't know what to say. What's that? Easily taken in, maybe? Easily taken content, or easily, I don't know, whatever. You get the concept. You get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so thank you for listening to episode 16. As always, go down below. Check the links down below. The Discord's down below. The TikTok's down below. The Twitter's down below. And also, grow your branding skill with Logo Serial. I know they're revamping everything with Logo Serial, so that's awesome. Jacob is coming up with a new product, so that's fantastic. And also connect with me. Connect with me on Twitter. And if you have any questions or suggestions about the podcast, feel free to either DM me or the podcast Twitter. That'd be awesome. But anyways, guys, hope you have a great rest of your day, week, or month whenever you're listening to this. And as always, make sure you tell someone that you love them. All right, we will see you in episode 17. Take it easy.